There are so many aquarium sizes, but there's no one size fits all. But there are ways to figure out what size is best for different individuals. So let's figure out how many gallons is right for you. My name is Jennifer and you're watching Fishy Pet Keeping. Stay tuned! We're gonna go through 5 categories that will help you figure out what size tank is your best choice. And these categories are maintenance, space, what fish do I want, transport, and also costs. So let's start off with maintenance. Smaller tanks, or also known as nano tanks, are usually thought to be a great first aquarium, and yes, it is a great size for beginners. But the con for having such a small tank is that you have to do maintenance more often. And by maintenance, I mean water changes. The smaller the size, the faster dirt and debris builds up, making it more likely to develop an ammonia or nitrite spike. Ammonia and nitrite are toxic to fish and will kill them. And so this way it's harder for you to keep parameters stable. Most likely, keeping for example a 75 gallon is easier to maintain. And I say most likely because it heavily depends on your choice of stocking and if you have live plants or good filtration in there. So a 5 gallon with a single betta and possibly some plants for him to hide in, or her, and a 75 gallon with 2 adult Oscars will most likely require equally as much maintenance. Since, sure, the tank is bigger and it takes a longer time for the debris to build up, but Oscars produce a lot of waste and they eat a ton of food. But on the other hand, doing a 50% water change in a 5 gallon is much easier than doing a water change in a 75 gallon, especially if you're using the bucket method. Oh, and by the way, if you want to keep supporting this channel even further so I can keep making these kinds of videos, consider supporting the channel by becoming a patron. You'll get extra benefits like early access to videos and also behind the scenes content. If you're interested in this, the link to my Patreon page is in the description. Thank you for listening. Our next category is space. Do you live in a house or maybe you live in a small apartment? Then you may already have figured out that a, for example, 150 gallon may not be the appropriate size for your apartment, if it's not bigger than the majority. If you have a house though, then it's not really a problem for most. For some it still is, but for most, not a problem. I live in an apartment. It's not small, it's moderately big, I would say. And I still have a 150 in my living room. But maybe you don't even want a huge tank. Then 2 of the best beginner sizes in my opinion is either a 15 gallon or a 29 gallon. The reason why I say these sizes specifically is because it's not difficult to maintain if you have researched a little bit, and at the same time you won't take up too much space in your home. The majority chooses a smaller tank as their first tank, and that's understandable because it's cheaper and also it takes up less space, obviously. If you want a few nano tanks in your home, you could even fix a rack for those. That could save you some space too, instead of having it all spread out all over the place. In our third category, we're talking about what fish do I want? You're probably thinking about the best size to get at first and then getting your fish. And yes, you should get a tank before getting fish, obviously, but I'm trying to say something else here, because I think it should be not literally the other way around, but you should think about what fish you want before even considering the size tank you want. Look up what kind of fish you want. Then when you know what species you want and potential tank mates even, and you have done your research, decide the tank size. The tank size. I've done the mistake of getting my first 15 gallon tank, which was my first own aquarium. Almost every single fish that I wanted became way too big for that aquarium. So I ended up getting a few other fish instead. So do me a favor and think about what fish you would want, and even better, maybe even write it down on paper. Do you want an Oscar? One Oscar needs at least a 75 gallon. Some people say 55 gallons, but I wouldn't put them in less than a 75 gallon. Maybe you want a school of cardinal tetras. A 10 gallon is appropriate. Maybe even a fancy goldfish. A fancy goldfish needs at least 29 gallons to thrive. Oh, and they like company, so you'll need at least 2 of them. Another example is the rummy-nose tetra, but they love to swim around a lot and have a lot of open space. I wouldn't give them less than a 29-gallon to be honest. So just because they're small doesn't mean you can keep them in a nano tank. A tip is to write down fish you want in all sizes, everything from nano fish to fish that need a big tank. Then figure out which tank you're gonna get, and based on that decision, you know what fish you can get. Also, some fish, small and big, are more advanced than others. Like, some are more sensitive to shifting parameters, some eat live foods exclusively. You get it. Just an example, I wouldn't recommend a pea puffer as a beginner fish because they need a little bit more special care because they're little snowflakes. And so our fourth category is transport. Do you plan to move soon, or have you found that home where you have decided you're gonna stay for a good while? If you're planning to move soon or you move kinda often, I wouldn't recommend a giant aquarium. If you have ever moved a bigger aquarium, you know how much of a pain in the butt it is to move this enormous glass box. They weigh much more than you expect. A 10-gallon is easier to transport since it weighs so much less. Still, if you need to move that, please don't do it with the water in. That will certainly be heavy, and you also run the risk of the tank getting too much pressure, resulting in the tank leaking. And trust me, even if it doesn't look like it contains a lot of water, when it's all on the floor, it's a lot more than you think. It's pretty obvious that smaller to medium tanks are easier to transport, but if you have friends or family that like to help you with transporting stuff, I don't think having a bigger tank will be an issue. And the last category is costs. Obviously, a new 150 costs way more to buy than a 15-gallon. The running cost will also be higher in the bigger tanks, and almost everything is more expensive. The filter, heater if you're gonna keep tropical fish, decorations, the fish probably costs more, etc. So remember, it's not just the aquarium and the stand that costs money. It's everything else too. So if you're in a tight budget but still want that joy in your life that are aquariums, get a small to a medium tank. And we all have different opinions to what is a small tank and what's a medium tank. To me, a small tank is anywhere from 5 to 15 gallons, while a medium size to me is 29 to 55 gallons. Anything bigger than that is on the bigger side to me. For some people, 55 gallons might be huge. If you have a good income and you're not afraid of spending money, go for a big tank. If you're on a tighter budget and don't want to or can't spend very much money, go for a small or medium-sized tank. The most important thing in the end is that your fish is happy. Don't get a fancy goldfish for your 10-gallon. Don't be afraid to invest in a test kit or test strips. And also have medication on hand if your fish gets sick. No animal is a throwaway just because it may be cheap. They still have a life and it's your responsibility to take care of it, since they can't for themselves. So what's the conclusion for this? It completely depends on your lifestyle, how you live around you, and your budget. I hope I've helped you at least a little bit to decide what's best for you. Was there something I mentioned that you maybe didn't think about? Leave a comment down below. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a like and also consider subscribing. It's free and it helps me out a lot. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!